My name is Sage, I am 28 years old, and 3 months ago my entire family turned against me when I refused to hand over $150,000 of my savings to my sister. What they did not know was that I had been secretly recording every family meeting for months, documenting lies that would destroy everything they thought they knew about our perfect family legacy. The evidence I gathered would expose a 20-year conspiracy that reached back to our childhood, involving forged documents, stolen inheritance money, and a web of manipulation that made my refusal look like an act of rebellion when it was actually self-preservation. But before we dive into how I brought down a family empire built on lies and theft, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you have ever dealt with toxic family members, and do not forget to subscribe because this story gets absolutely wild. You will not believe what my own blood relatives were willing to do for money, and how karma served them the coldest dish of justice I have ever witnessed. It all started 6 months ago when my sister Brooklyn came to my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday evening. She had been crying, her mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers, and she clutched a stack of papers against her chest like they contained the secrets of the universe. I invited her in, made tea, and listened as she spun what I thought was a tragic tale about her husband Marcus losing his construction business to a lawsuit. According to Brooklyn, Marcus had been sued by a client who claimed faulty foundation work had caused $50,000 in damage to their home. The legal fees had drained their savings, and now they faced losing their house, their cars, and everything they had built together over 8 years of marriage. She needed exactly $150,000 to cover the remaining legal costs and keep them afloat until Marcus could rebuild his business. "Sage, you are the only person I can turn to," she sobbed into her tissue. "Mom and Dad already mortgaged their house to help us with the first round of legal fees. You have been so successful with your tech consulting business, and I know you have been saving money. I would not ask if I was not desperate." The amount she requested was nearly every penny I had saved over 5 years of working 60-hour weeks, living in a tiny studio apartment, and denying myself vacations or luxury purchases. I had sacrificed social events, relationships, and personal happiness to build that nest egg because I dreamed of buying a house and starting my own company. But Brooklyn was my older sister, the person who had protected me from bullies in school and taught me how to drive when our parents were too busy working. I told her I needed time to think about it, which triggered the first red flag. Her tears stopped instantly, replaced by cold anger that I had never seen directed at me before. "Time to think about what, Sage? Whether your own sister deserves help when she is drowning. I cannot believe you would even hesitate when family needs you most." That night, I could not sleep. Something about her story felt rehearsed, like she had practiced every pause and sob in front of a mirror. The next morning, I decided to drive past Marcus's construction office to see if it really was closed. What I found was a thriving business with 3 trucks in the parking lot and workers loading equipment. Marcus himself was standing outside, laughing with a client and shaking hands over what appeared to be a successful deal. My blood turned to ice water. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching normal business operations while my mind raced through every detail of Brooklyn's story. If Marcus's business was fine, why did she need $150,000? I drove home and started making phone calls, beginning with the county courthouse to search for any lawsuits filed against Marcus's company. There were no lawsuits, no legal fees, no financial crisis. The lies ran deeper than I imagined. Over the next week, I conducted a thorough investigation that would have made a private detective proud. I discovered that Brooklyn and Marcus had recently purchased a brand new luxury SUV worth $60,000. Their social media posts from the past month showed expensive dinners, weekend getaways to wine country, and Brooklyn wearing jewelry I had never seen before. But the most shocking discovery came when I decided to verify her claim about our parents mortgaging their house. I called Mom under the pretense of checking on their retirement planning, carefully steering the conversation toward their finances. Not only had they not mortgaged their house, but Dad had just received a promotion at his engineering firm that increased his salary by $20,000 annually. My entire family had participated in an elaborate lie designed to steal my life savings. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. These were the people who had raised me, who had sung happy birthday at every celebration, who had supposedly loved me unconditionally. Yet they had looked me in the eyes and constructed a fictional crisis to manipulate me into handing over money I had earned through years of sacrifice and hard work. I spent 3 sleepless nights trying to understand their motivation. Was $150,000 really worth destroying our family relationship? Did they think I was stupid enough to give away my savings without asking questions? Or had they been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment when they thought I would be most vulnerable to emotional manipulation? The worst part was realizing that this probably was not their first attempt at financial manipulation. I started remembering other suspicious requests over the years. Brooklyn asking for $3,000 for emergency dental work that she never mentioned again. Mom needing $5,000 for roof repairs that never seemed to happen. Dad requesting $2,000 to help a colleague in crisis, whose name he could never remember when I asked follow-up questions. I had given them money each time because I trusted them, because saying no to family felt wrong, because I believed their stories without question. How much of my hard-earned money had already disappeared into their pockets through these smaller scams? How long had they been viewing me as nothing more than a personal ATM with convenient emotional buttons they could push whenever they needed quick cash? The realization that my own blood relatives had been systematically stealing from me for years ignited a fury I did not know I was capable of feeling. They had taken advantage of my love, my loyalty, and my generous nature while I worked myself to exhaustion building a future they planned to steal piece by piece. But instead of confronting them immediately, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to gather evidence of their deception, document every lie, and expose the truth in a way that would ensure they could never manipulate another family member again. They wanted to play games with my money and my trust? I would show them what happens when you underestimate someone who has spent 5 years building a successful business by outsmarting competitors and solving complex problems. The discovery of my family's betrayal triggered something cold and calculating inside me that I had never accessed before. Instead of emotional reactions or tearful confrontations, I found myself thinking like the strategic business consultant I had become over 5 years of helping companies solve their most complex problems. My family had declared war on my financial security, and I was going to respond with the same ruthless efficiency I used to dismantle failing corporate structures. My first step was documenting everything. I created an encrypted folder on my laptop and began collecting evidence of every lie they had told me. Screenshots of Marcus's thriving business website, photos of their expensive purchases, bank records showing my parents' stable financial situation, and detailed timelines of their contradictory stories. I approached this investigation with the same methodical precision I used when auditing company finances for my clients. But documentation alone would not be enough. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception and identify everyone involved in the conspiracy. Was this just Brooklyn, Marcus, and our parents, or were other family members participating in what was clearly a coordinated effort to steal my savings? I decided to test the waters by calling my cousin Jennifer, who had always been the family gossip. I told her that Brooklyn had asked me for help with some financial troubles and wanted to know if Jennifer had heard anything about Marcus's business problems. Her response was immediate and telling. "Oh, honey, Brooklyn mentioned something about that to me last month," Jennifer said with the casual tone of someone repeating well-rehearsed information. "She said Marcus got hit with a huge lawsuit and they might lose everything. Your parents have been so worried about them. It is such a blessing that you are in a position to help family when they need it most." The conspiracy included extended family members who were either willing participants or useful idiots spreading the fabricated story. I felt like I was uncovering a criminal organization that happened to share my DNA. How many family gatherings had they used to coordinate their stories? How many times had they laughed about my gullibility behind my back while planning their next request for money? Over the next 2 weeks, I conducted what I privately called Operation Truth Serum. I reached out to different family members with carefully crafted questions designed to reveal how deep the deception ran. My Aunt Susan knew about the lawsuit and had even offered to contribute money to help Brooklyn and Marcus. My Uncle Robert had heard that I was being difficult about helping family in crisis. My grandmother had been told that Marcus was too proud to ask for help directly, which explained why Brooklyn had to approach me instead. They had poisoned my entire extended family against me before I even knew I was under attack. The scope of their manipulation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. They had created a complete alternate reality where I was the villain for not immediately handing over my life savings to solve a crisis that existed only in their lies. Every family member had been given carefully crafted talking points designed to pressure me into compliance, while making me look selfish and heartless for asking questions. But their biggest mistake was underestimating my intelligence and resourcefulness. They saw me as the quiet, compliant youngest daughter who had always been generous with money and trusting of family. They did not know that building a successful consulting business had taught me how to recognize manipulation tactics, investigate financial irregularities, and construct airtight cases for exposing corporate fraud. I spent hours each night developing my strategy for exposing them. Simply confronting Brooklyn would allow her to spin new lies or claim misunderstanding. Calling a family meeting would give them time to coordinate their stories and deflect blame. I needed an approach that would make denial impossible and consequences unavoidable. The solution came to me during a client meeting where I was helping a company deal with embezzlement by trusted employees. The key was not just proving the theft, but ensuring that everyone involved faced appropriate consequences while protecting innocent parties from future manipulation. I needed to expose my family's lies in a way that would permanently damage their ability to scam other relatives while demonstrating the serious consequences of betraying trust. I decided to create what I called the documentation project. Every time a family member contacted me about Brooklyn's situation, I would record our conversation using a legal app that notified them of the recording. I would ask specific questions about the timeline, the amounts involved, and who had told them what information. I would create a detailed paper trail showing exactly how the lies had spread through our family network. But I also realized that simply exposing their deception would not be enough satisfaction for the years of manipulation they had inflicted on me. They had stolen my money, my trust, and my peace of mind while making me question my own generosity and judgment. They deserved consequences that matched the severity of their betrayal. I began researching legal options for recovering money obtained through fraud and deception. I consulted with attorneys about the possibility of filing criminal charges for conspiracy to commit theft. I investigated whether their lies constituted wire fraud since they had used phone calls and text messages to spread false information across state lines to family members. Most importantly, I started planning my exit strategy from a family that had revealed itself to be a criminal organization disguised as loving relatives. I began researching cities where I could relocate my consulting business, places far enough away that unexpected visits would be impossible, but close enough that I could return for genuine emergencies, if any actually existed. The woman who had spent 5 years sacrificing personal happiness to build financial security was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the biggest threats to her well-being were not strangers or economic downturns, but the people she had trusted most. My family had wanted to steal my money, but they had accidentally created something far more dangerous, a version of me that was no longer willing to be anyone's victim. They thought they were manipulating a naive young woman who valued family loyalty above personal interests. They were about to discover that they had actually targeted a strategic thinker who specialized in dismantling complex systems and exposing hidden weaknesses. The game was just beginning, and I held all the advantages they did not even know existed. 2 weeks after discovering the truth about my family's lies, Brooklyn escalated her manipulation campaign with a level of desperation that confirmed I had made the right choice by refusing her initial request. She began calling me daily, sometimes multiple times, alternating between tearful pleading and angry accusations designed to break down my resistance through emotional exhaustion. Sage, I cannot sleep knowing that you have the power to save our family and you are choosing not to use it, she sobbed during one particularly manipulative phone call. Marcus has been talking about suicide because he feels like such a failure. Do you really want your brother-in-law's blood on your hands because you were too selfish to help when we needed you most? The mention of suicide was a new low that revealed how desperate she had become. I knew from my investigation that Marcus was happier than ever, running a successful business and enjoying the fruits of their expensive lifestyle. But threatening suicide was a classic manipulation tactic designed to create urgency and bypass logical thinking through fear and guilt. I decided it was time to start gathering recorded evidence of her lies. Before our next conversation, I downloaded a legal call recording app that would notify her of the recording while preserving everything she said for future use. When she called that evening, I listened to the automated message informing her that our conversation was being recorded for quality purposes, then waited to see if she would continue with her fabricated story. She did not hesitate for even a second. Sage, I know this is hard for you, but Marcus's lawyer called today and said we need the money by Friday, or they are dropping our case. She lied smoothly into a phone she knew was recording her words. The family who sued us is threatening to seize our house and cars if we cannot pay the settlement amount. Mom and Dad are beside themselves with worry. Everyone is counting on you to do the right thing for family. I had my first piece of recorded evidence proving her willingness to lie under circumstances where she knew documentation existed. But I needed more than just Brooklyn's lies. I needed to demonstrate how extensively the deception had spread throughout our family network and identify who was actively participating versus who was simply repeating information they believed to be true. My next target was our mother, who had supposedly mortgaged her house to help with initial legal fees. I called her using the same recording app and gently brought up Brooklyn's situation, expressing concern about the family's financial stress. Mom's response was immediate and emotional. "Oh, sweetheart, this whole situation has been keeping me awake at night," she said with perfect conviction. "Your father, and I did not want to worry you with the details, but we have been struggling to make the mortgage payments ever since we took out that second loan to help Brooklyn and Marcus with their legal bills. We are not young anymore, and the idea of losing our home terrifies me. But we could not let our daughter and son-in-law face this crisis alone." Another complete fabrication, recorded and preserved for posterity. I now had evidence that both my sister and mother were willing to lie directly to my face about serious financial matters while knowing their words were being documented. The recording also revealed something else. They had coordinated their stories down to specific details about mortgage payments and legal fees that did not exist. But I needed allies in this fight, people who could help me expose the truth without becoming targets of the same manipulation campaign that was being directed at me. I reached out to my college roommate Amanda, who had become a successful financial advisor and understood the importance of protecting savings from family manipulation. I sent her copies of my evidence and explained the situation without asking for anything more than a listening ear. "Sage, this is financial abuse," Amanda said bluntly after reviewing my documentation. "What they are doing to you is a form of elder abuse, except they are targeting your life savings instead of exploiting someone's age or disability. You need to protect yourself legally and financially before this gets worse." Amanda introduced me to her colleague David, an attorney who specialized in family financial disputes. David reviewed my evidence during a free consultation and confirmed my worst fears. My family's behavior constituted fraud and conspiracy, with potential criminal charges if I chose to pursue them. More importantly, he warned me that family financial manipulation typically escalated when initial attempts failed. "They are going to increase pressure on you over the next few weeks," David predicted accurately. "Expect more family members to contact you, more emotional manipulation, and possibly even threats or ultimatums. Document everything, because this pattern of behavior suggests they have done this before and will do it again to other family members if they are not stopped. His words proved prophetic within days. My Aunt Susan called to express disappointment in my selfishness regarding Brooklyn's crisis. My cousin Jennifer sent a long text message about the importance of family loyalty and helping each other through difficult times. My grandmother left a voicemail saying she was heartbroken to learn that I was putting money above family relationships. Each conversation followed the same script. They had been told that I was refusing to help Brooklyn and Marcus despite having plenty of money and no legitimate reason to decline. They had been given carefully crafted talking points designed to make me feel guilty, selfish, and isolated from family support. None of them asked for my side of the story or questioned the narrative they had been fed. The coordination was so obvious that I started wondering if they held regular meetings to plan their manipulation strategies. How many family gatherings had been used to discuss my finances and plan their approach to extracting money from me? How long had they been viewing me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited when they needed quick cash? I decided to test their commitment to the lie by creating my own fictional crisis. I called Brooklyn and told her that my consulting business was facing a major lawsuit that might bankrupt me, making it impossible for me to help anyone financially until the legal issues were resolved. If she truly cared about my well-being, she would express concern and offer emotional support during my difficult time. Instead, she became angry and accusatory. "Sage, you are making excuses because you do not want to help family," she snapped. "I know you have money saved up, and I know you could get a loan if you really wanted to help us. You are just being selfish and looking for reasons to say no." Her response revealed everything I needed to know about her true priorities. She was not interested in my well-being or financial security. She only cared about accessing my money. The family emergency was fake, but her anger about my refusal to be exploited was completely genuine. That night, I made two crucial decisions that would determine how this conflict ended. First, I was going to expose their lies to the entire extended family in a way that would make denial impossible and future manipulation attempts ineffective. Second, I was going to leave this toxic environment permanently, relocating my business and building a new life surrounded by people who valued honesty and integrity over easy money and family manipulation. My relatives thought they were pressuring a compliant victim who would eventually cave to their demands. They were about to learn that they had actually declared war on someone who specialized in solving complex problems and implementing systematic solutions. The next phase of my plan would demonstrate the difference between someone who reacts emotionally to betrayal and someone who responds strategically to eliminate future threats. The recording app on my phone had captured dozens of lies from multiple family members. My financial records proved their stories were fabricated. My attorney had confirmed that their behavior was potentially criminal. I had everything I needed to destroy their credibility while protecting myself from further manipulation. They wanted $150,000 of my savings. I was going to cost them something far more valuable: their reputation, their relationships, and their ability to ever manipulate another family member again. 3 weeks after discovering my family's elaborate deception, I was ready to execute what I privately called Operation Transparency. Brooklyn had become increasingly desperate in her attempts to extract my savings, escalating from daily phone calls to showing up at my apartment unannounced with Marcus in tow. Their latest tactic involved bringing our parents as backup, creating a united front designed to overwhelm my resistance through coordinated emotional manipulation. "Sage, we're all here because we love you and we are worried about the person you are becoming," Mom said as the four of them crowded into my small living room uninvited. "This selfishness is not how we raised you. Family helps family, no matter what the cost." Dad nodded solemnly, playing his assigned role in their performance. "Your mother and I are struggling to make our mortgage payments because we helped Brooklyn and Marcus when they needed us most. We did not hesitate to risk our own financial security for family. Why are you different?" Brooklyn had tears ready on command, clutching Marcus's hand while staring at me with wounded eyes. "Sage, if you do not help us by this weekend, We are going to lose everything. Our lawyer said the deadline is firm. After that, there will be nothing anyone can do to save our house or Marcus's business. It was a masterful performance that would have convinced me completely if I had not spent weeks investigating their lies and documenting their deception. But I was no longer the naive younger sister they remembered. I had become someone who understood manipulation tactics and knew exactly how to dismantle them systematically. I pulled out my laptop and opened the encrypted folder containing 3 weeks of evidence. Before we continue this conversation, I want to show you some interesting information I discovered about your situation, I said calmly, turning the screen toward them. The first document was a screenshot of Marcus's construction company website, featuring recent client testimonials and photos of completed projects from the past month. Marcus's face went pale as he realized I had been investigating his supposedly bankrupt business. This is your company's website from yesterday, I continued methodically. It shows active projects, positive reviews, and contact information for potential new clients. That seems unusual for a business that is supposedly facing bankruptcy due to a major lawsuit. Brooklyn tried to interrupt with explanations about the website being outdated, but I held up my hand and continued presenting evidence like I was making a corporate fraud presentation to skeptical board members. I also contacted the county courthouse to research the lawsuit you mentioned, I said, displaying official search results on my screen. There are no pending or recent cases filed against Marcus's construction company. No lawsuits, no legal fees, no financial judgments. The entire legal crisis you described does not exist in any official records. Mom's confident expression cracked as she realized the scope of my investigation. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, probably wondering how much I had discovered about their own fabricated mortgage story. Finally, I said, pulling up bank records and financial documents, I verified your claim about Mom and Dad mortgaging their house to help you. Not only did they not take out a second mortgage, but Dad recently received a significant salary increase at his engineering firm. The room fell silent as the weight of exposed lies settled over my family members. They had walked into my apartment expecting to overwhelm me with coordinated emotional manipulation, but instead they found themselves facing documented proof of their elaborate deception. You investigated your own family? Brooklyn whispered, as if gathering evidence of lies was somehow worse than telling the lies in the first place. I protected myself from theft, I corrected firmly. What you attempted to do was steal $150,000 of my savings through fraud and conspiracy. You coordinated lies involving multiple family members, created fake emergencies, and manipulated my emotions to access money I earned through years of hard work. Marcus finally spoke up, his voice defensive and angry. We are family, Sage. Families help each other without needing lawyers and investigations and all this corporate nonsense you are pulling. Families do not lie to each other, I responded coldly. Families do not create elaborate schemes to steal each other's life savings. Families do not manipulate emotions and threaten relationships to access money that does not belong to them. I stood up and walked to my front door, opening it wide and gesturing for them to leave. This conversation is over. You came here expecting me to hand over my savings based on lies you have been telling for weeks. Instead, you discovered that I documented your deception and gathered evidence of your conspiracy. Sage, please, Mom tried one last appeal. We can explain everything if you just give us a chance. There are details you do not understand about the situation. There are no details that justify lying to me for weeks, I said firmly. There are no explanations that make stealing my savings acceptable. There are no circumstances that excuse manipulating my emotions and poisoning extended family members against me. Brooklyn's tears turned to anger as she realized their manipulation campaign had failed completely. Fine, Sage. Keep your precious money. But do not expect to be welcome at family gatherings anymore. Do not expect us to be there for you when you need help. You chose money over family. I chose honesty over theft, I corrected. I chose self-respect over manipulation. I chose protecting myself from people who view me as nothing more than a personal ATM they can access whenever they need quick cash. As they filed out of my apartment, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness, because I was watching relationships that had defined my entire life crumble under the weight of their betrayal. Relief, because I no longer had to pretend that people who would lie and steal from me deserved my trust, loyalty, or financial support. But I was not finished with them yet. Exposing their lies to their faces was satisfying, but it did not address the broader problem of their manipulation campaign throughout our extended family. They had poisoned cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents against me by spreading false stories about my selfishness and unwillingness to help family in crisis. I spent the next week systematically contacting every family member who had pressured me about Brooklyn's situation, sharing my evidence and explaining how they had been manipulated into participating in a fraud scheme. Some were shocked and apologetic. Others were defensive about being deceived. A few accused me of overreacting to normal family financial difficulties. The responses revealed which family members valued truth over comfortable lies, and which ones were willing to support deception as long as it did not directly affect them. The experience taught me valuable lessons about choosing relationships based on character rather than blood connections, and about the difference between people who earn trust through consistent honesty versus those who demand trust based on genetic relationships. The week following my family confrontation unleashed consequences that exceeded even my strategic expectations. Within 48 hours, the carefully constructed web of lies that Brooklyn and my parents had built throughout our extended family began unraveling in spectacular fashion. Family members who had been manipulated into supporting their fictional crisis started asking uncomfortable questions and demanding explanations that no one could provide. My cousin Jennifer called first, her voice tight with embarrassment and anger. "Sage, I just drove past Marcus's construction site, and there are 6 workers building what looks like a brand new commercial building. If they are facing bankruptcy, why is his business busier than ever? Did Brooklyn lie to all of us about their financial problems?" I confirmed her suspicions and shared selected evidence from my investigation, watching through phone silence as Jennifer processed the scope of deception that had been used to manipulate her emotions and financial support. She had contributed $2,000 to Brooklyn's fake legal fund, money she could not afford to lose from her teacher's salary. "I trusted her," Jennifer said quietly. "When she cried about losing their house, I took money from my emergency fund because I thought family needed help. How could she look me in the eyes and lie about something so serious?" Jennifer's experience was repeated throughout our extended family as the truth spread like wildfire through text messages, phone calls, and social media posts. My Aunt Susan discovered that the urgent legal deadline Brooklyn had mentioned was completely fabricated when she called the law firm supposedly representing them. My Uncle Robert realized he had been manipulated into co-signing a loan application based on false financial information. My grandmother learned that the family emergency she had been losing sleep over existed only in Brooklyn's imagination. The revelation that multiple family members had contributed money to a non-existent crisis created a secondary wave of anger that had nothing to do with my refusal to participate. People who had sacrificed their own financial security to help with Brooklyn's lies now faced the humiliating reality that they had been treated as easy marks in an elaborate con game. But the consequences extended far beyond hurt feelings and financial losses. Brooklyn and Marcus's marriage began cracking under the pressure of exposed lies and failed manipulation. According to Jennifer, who lived in their neighborhood, they had been having screaming arguments loud enough for neighbors to hear through their windows. Marcus apparently blamed Brooklyn for creating a scheme that was too complicated and involving too many people who could expose them. My parents faced their own relationship crisis as Dad discovered that Mom had been the mastermind behind the coordination of family manipulation. She had created detailed lists of talking points for different relatives, assigned specific roles in their emotional manipulation campaign, and even practiced tearful phone conversations in front of their bathroom mirror. Dad felt betrayed by being used as an unwitting participant in fraud schemes he had not fully understood. Your mother turned me into a criminal, Dad confessed during a late-night phone call where he sounded exhausted and defeated. I thought I was supporting our daughter through a genuine crisis. Instead, I was helping steal money from my youngest child while lying to relatives who trusted me. I do not know how to live with that knowledge. The family business connections that had always seemed so important suddenly became sources of professional embarrassment. Marcus's construction company started losing contracts as word spread about his involvement in financial deception schemes. My parents' neighbors and coworkers learned about their participation in fraud through the extended family gossip network, damaging reputations they had spent decades building. Brooklyn attempted damage control by creating new lies to explain the old lies, claiming that I had misunderstood their situation and exaggerated normal family financial discussions into conspiracy theories. But the evidence I had gathered was too thorough and too well documented for anyone to dismiss as misunderstanding or overreaction. Her desperate attempts to maintain credibility only made the situation worse. She called family members with contradictory explanations for why Marcus's business appeared successful despite their claims of bankruptcy. She invented new versions of their legal troubles that contradicted previous stories she had told the same people weeks earlier. She accused me of fabricating evidence and manipulating family members against them, claims that fell apart when people remembered her own contradictory statements. The social dynamics of family gatherings shifted dramatically as people chose sides based on their tolerance for deception versus their loyalty to traditional family hierarchies. Some relatives supported Brooklyn despite the evidence, arguing that family unity was more important than financial honesty. Others felt so betrayed by the manipulation that they cut contact entirely with anyone who had participated in the lies. Christmas planning became impossible as no one could agree on whether Brooklyn and Marcus should be invited to events where their victims would be present. My grandmother tried to organize a family meeting to work through our differences, but too many people refused to attend any gathering that included the perpetrators of financial fraud. I watched this chaos unfold from a position of strategic detachment, documenting everything for potential legal proceedings while making my own plans for permanent relocation. My consulting business was portable enough to operate from anywhere with reliable internet, and I had been researching cities where I could build a new life surrounded by people who earned trust through consistent honesty rather than demanding it through genetic connections. The woman who had spent 28 years prioritizing family relationships above personal boundaries was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the most dangerous threats to well-being often came from people who demanded unconditional loyalty while providing conditional honesty in return. Brooklyn made one final attempt to salvage our relationship by showing up at my apartment with a typed letter of apology that read like it had been composed by artificial intelligence. She claimed that family stress had caused her to exaggerate their financial situation, and she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive honest mistakes made during difficult times. I read her letter carefully, noting how it avoided taking responsibility for deliberate lies while minimizing months of coordinated manipulation as simple misunderstandings. She was still trying to manage my perception of her behavior instead of acknowledging the truth about what she had attempted to do. Brooklyn, I said calmly, this apology is another manipulation attempt disguised as accountability. You are sorry you got caught, not sorry you tried to steal my savings through elaborate lies involving multiple family members. She left my apartment for the final time, and I felt the last emotional connection to my birth family dissolve into the relief of knowing I would never again have to wonder which family members were plotting to exploit my success, generosity, or trust. 6 months after refusing to hand over my life savings to family members who had tried to steal it through elaborate lies, I was sitting in my new apartment 3 states away, running my consulting business more successfully than ever while building relationships with people who had earned trust through consistent honesty rather than demanding it through genetic connections. The relocation had been easier than expected because my business was entirely digital, requiring only reliable internet and video conferencing capabilities that existed everywhere in the modern world. My clients appreciated the strategic thinking and problem-solving skills that had helped me expose family fraud, leading to contract renewals and referrals that increased my income by 40% over 6 months. Brooklyn and Marcus eventually divorced after their marriage collapsed under the weight of failed manipulation schemes and mutual blame for getting caught in elaborate lies. According to family gossip that reached me through Jennifer, Brooklyn had attempted similar financial scams on Marcus's relatives, destroying relationships throughout both sides of their extended family network. Marcus lost several construction contracts as word spread about his involvement in deception schemes, forcing him to relocate his business to a different region where his reputation was not permanently damaged. Brooklyn moved back in with our parents, creating a household tension that strained their marriage and made family gatherings uncomfortable for everyone involved. My parents faced their own consequences as neighbors and coworkers learned about their participation in conspiracy to commit fraud against their youngest daughter. Dad's engineering firm conducted an ethics investigation after someone reported concerns about his involvement in financial deception, ultimately clearing him of professional misconduct but damaging his reputation among colleagues who questioned his judgment and character. Mom lost several longtime friendships when friends realized she had been using their emotional support as practice sessions for manipulating me during coordinated family phone calls. The revelation that she had been treating genuine relationships as rehearsals for fraud schemes destroyed trust that had been built over decades of apparent friendship. But the most satisfying consequence was watching how their failed manipulation attempt affected their ability to exploit other family members in the future. Jennifer started questioning every financial request from relatives, demanding documentation and verification before contributing money to family emergencies. My Aunt Susan implemented a personal policy of never lending money to relatives without written agreements and specific repayment schedules. The extended family network that had once been vulnerable to emotional manipulation became educated about financial fraud tactics and suspicious of any requests that involved urgency, secrecy, or pressure to act without asking questions. Brooklyn and my parents had accidentally immunized their potential future victims against the exact schemes they had specialized in executing. My new life included carefully chosen relationships with people whose character had been demonstrated through consistent actions rather than assumed through family connections. My neighbor Amanda became a close friend after proving her reliability through months of small interactions that revealed her values and integrity. My business mentor David provided guidance and support without ever asking for personal favors or financial assistance. I joined professional organizations and volunteer groups that attracted people who valued competence, honesty, and mutual respect over hierarchies based on birth order or family status. These relationships felt healthier and more authentic than family connections that had been built on unspoken obligations and unconditional loyalty, regardless of behavior. The financial security that Brooklyn had tried to steal became the foundation for investments in my future well-being and professional development. I purchased a house with a view of mountains instead of relatives who might visit with hidden agendas. I expanded my business capabilities through advanced training and certification programs that increased my value to clients who appreciated strategic thinking and ethical decision-making. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts about people's motivations and character instead of dismissing red flags because of emotional attachments or family obligations. The experience of being systematically manipulated by people I had trusted unconditionally taught me valuable lessons about recognizing deception, protecting boundaries, and choosing relationships based on demonstrated values rather than genetic connections. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation from Jennifer, who was marrying a man she had met through her teaching profession. The invitation included a handwritten note expressing gratitude for helping her recognize manipulation tactics that had been used against our entire extended family. She credited my investigation with teaching her to value honesty over family harmony and to protect herself from people who demanded trust without earning it. I attended Jennifer's wedding and met relatives who had learned important lessons about financial boundaries and healthy relationships from watching the consequences of Brooklyn's failed manipulation schemes. Several family members apologized for pressuring me to participate in fraud schemes they had not recognized as criminal behavior until after the truth was exposed. The wedding reception provided an opportunity to observe how family dynamics had shifted in response to the revelation that some members were willing to lie and steal from others while demanding loyalty and support in return. People were more cautious about sharing personal information, more skeptical of requests for financial help, and more protective of their emotional and financial boundaries. Brooklyn was not invited to the wedding, marking her permanent exclusion from family celebrations that she had once dominated through manipulation and emotional drama. Her absence created space for authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear of disappointing someone who might retaliate through lies and manipulation. As I drove home from Jennifer's wedding, I reflected on how refusing to be victimized by family financial fraud had transformed my entire understanding of relationships, boundaries, and personal worth. The woman who had prioritized family harmony over personal well-being was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the most loving thing you can do for manipulative people is refuse to enable their destructive behavior. My life had become smaller in terms of family connections, but richer in terms of authentic relationships with people who had proven their trustworthiness through consistent actions rather than genetic inheritance. I had learned that choosing your family based on character rather than birth circumstances creates stronger bonds and healthier dynamics than unconditional loyalty to people who exploit emotional connections for personal gain. Looking back, I am grateful that Brooklyn demanded $150,000 of my savings because her greed exposed manipulation schemes that might have continued for years if she had been satisfied with smaller amounts. Her overreach created an opportunity for me to document criminal behavior, protect myself from future exploitation, and build a life surrounded by people who value honesty above convenience and respect above compliance. Had you ever discovered that family members were manipulating or lying to you for money? How did you handle the betrayal when people you trusted most turned out to be the biggest threats to your well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below, and hit that like button if you believe that choosing character over genetics creates healthier relationships. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories about recognizing manipulation, protecting boundaries, and building authentic connections with people who earn trust through consistent honesty. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and growth, and remember that sometimes the greatest gift manipulative people can give you is showing their true character clearly enough that you can protect yourself and build better relationships elsewhere.